You're listening to The People's Pitch, the official podcast of Minneapolis City Soccer Club, brought to you by FootballStadiumPrints.com. Let's start the show.
And as I talked about just a couple minutes ago, as Joe Watt stands over this one, he appears to be the one taking the penalty here. This is a huge confidence booster if you're Duluth.
Worst case scenario for City right here.
And it stopped! Yes! And it stopped!
Totally
Matt
redeems
Elder.
himself.
Matt Elder redeeming himself. Oliver with the right foot. The shot of the goal!
Oliver!
Justin Oliver will break the scoreless tie. And it is 1-0 Minneapolis City. Is Hutton now on the offense with the left foot. And it is now 2-0 Minneapolis City.
Good finish.
Nick Hutton taking his quick victory lap.
Happy holidays, soccer fans. This is The People's Pitch, the officialist and merriest podcast of your Minneapolis City SC. As always, I'm your host, Nate, and joining me, of course, is the dasher to my dancer, the man with the deepest soccer Rolodex in the upper Midwest, John Bisworm. John, are we celebrating tonight or what?
I actually celebrated last night. So I'm back home in Wisconsin. I ended up hooking up with an old teammate from the Bavarian club, and we went to a dive bar that's close to both of our in-laws, and we were drinking beers and following the MLS draft and doing a shot every time someone from one of our organizations got drafted. So I have a pretty bad headache this morning there, Nate.
Hey man, that's all right. Sounds like a good way to spend the night.
It was pretty nice. I'm not gonna lie. It was nice. It was fun. It was really fun. People looking at us like, who are these two crazy guys? We're like going nuts, staring at a phone, ordering shots of Blackberry brand.
Yes,
just all the Wisconsin.
The Polish.
yeah, exactly.
Oh man, well tonight's show is the Happy Holidays show because there are just so damn many reasons to be happy in our corner of the soccer universe, John. First off, the Weird World Cup brought us one of the greatest games of all time. You got to be happy for Messi. Next, we're going to talk about last night's MLS Super Draft that made Three Crows very happy. And finally, we're going to talk about the next generation, or at least the search for them. We got the Futures Trials coming up, sure to make 100 young guys quite happy. So let's do this.
There's a joke in there somewhere. Oh, yeah, let's go, man. So World Cup stuff. The Cup has come and gone since we last spoke. Nate, you and I were both correct in jumping on the little flea bandwagon, seeing Argentina. Well, unless you've been living on a rock. Argentina won, folks. Newsflash. But they took the trophy back from defending champions France in penalties. It was a thriller, and some are saying that it was the best World Cup final in the history of the competition. However, I did receive a text message from my father during the penalties, basically saying we got to slow the hype train down because the best final, in fact, was the Germans taking a 1-0 win over the Argentines in 1990 in Italy. And I was like, okay, Dad, well, let's just call it 1A, 1B pops.
Yeah.
But I think this final had it all, Nate. But let's go ahead and hear what your thoughts were on the match.
Yeah, I mean, I think your dad's in a school of thought that is probably a little bit more analytical around a soccer match that, like, most people would not say a 1-0 victory was the greatest game of soccer they've ever seen. But
especially one that was a penalty.
Yeah,
so
right.
There wasn't even a goal in open play, but it was end-to-end action the whole game.
It's a guy that loves his defensive soccer.
Yeah.
I'll say, John, that it's really rare. I don't know if I've seen it that often that a match lines up to the media narrative, right? Like, how many times have you seen something along the lines, especially in the World Cup when there are so many stars, but you see something along the lines of like, oh, it's Messi versus Mbappe, and like it just doesn't deliver. It's like Ronaldo doesn't show up or whatever, right? So it's like, that was good, I guess. But man, this one did. Like, this game literally was Lionel Messi taking the reins and Kylian Mbappe pulling his team back into it. And it's just these two guys. What could they do to keep their team on the board and to keep them ahead? It was crazy, man. It was glorious to see. I mean, this is Messi in his prime. When you think about when you think about a guy that's the total package, a guy that's got the vision, the passing that was on display throughout this whole tournament, but in this game, and then just the ability to finish, phenomenal. And then Mbappe like proving himself as like the next gigantic global soccer star. Like the goals that kid was scoring, like nobody else in the tournament would have been able to do that. So just a phenomenal game. I'm also surprised that Argentina almost collapsed again, just like against the Dutch. Like I was like, this game's over. Like 2-0 going into the last 70 minutes, in the 70th minute. I'm just like, this is it. This is great. Great game for Argentina. Happy for Messi. Wonderful World Cup final. I was about ready to just like be done with it. And then, geez, just another 50 minutes of soccer in front of me at least.
Well, I think you're right. I think the number one thing for me, I'll go to the narrative piece in a second, but the game itself, like you're right. I was wondering why, while Argentina was in such a different gear for the first 30 minutes of that game, and then they just kind of throttled back. And I was like, why are you not going for the third goal when you have the juice to do it? Because you're going to run out of steam because France is rope-a-doping you. They're like, we have the ability to score 2-3 goals in a half, and we're going to just let you burn out, and then we're going to just come at you, which is what happened. But I was like, come on, guys, like you have it there. Like, just go take it. And I think that they got a little bit worried, like if we step on the gas too early, then Argentina's going to come and counter us, and we can't stop that because our guys are tired. So we're just going to bunker down. And then they bunkered down. They're like, oh shit, we need to like start playing again. And then the game opened up, and it was like super fun to watch. But I think from a narrative perspective, I think you're right. It's like into like college football or college basketball or even the NFL, and they're like, you get to the final game and you're like, it's so and so versus so and so, and then one of those so and so's ends up being a complete bozo, and like it's like one sided, and you're like, well, that sucked. You're like, I wasted 3 hours of my life on that. But even to the casual, like this one was good. I think that one thing for me that I took away from, I know, we all know what Messi can do. But one thing I took away that I think is important for people to note is that you don't have to play soccer like a headless chicken. And Messi is like the complete example of that. Like he'll track back and play defense when it's absolutely necessary and it's advantageous for him to do that. He won't go trotting all over the field and running around and exposing or expelling his energy just to try to get the ball. He will just walk into a space and drift into an area, and then as soon as the play develops, it's like a lightning bolt hits him, and and then his energy gets used.
Yep.
And it's always with the most supreme right intent, whether it's his passing, it's his movement, it's his ability to get a shot off quick. I mean, look what he did against Croatia, where when they scored that last goal that he set up, he just kind of walked into an area in between the center back and the left back, and he got the ball and kind of was in a bad spot and just kind of like picked his head up, protected the ball, then all of a sudden realized that the defender had leaned one way and then just hit the gas, turned the corner, hits the end line, plays the ball back, boom, goal. And you're like, wow. Like, could he have been able to do that if it was the 85th minute and he'd been running around like an asshole all day? No, he wouldn't have the energy. So it just shows that like the athletic side of the game, you need to have it, but you really need to be able to read the game to be at that supreme level that he's at. And then with Mbappe, like I still think Mbappe's a total asshole, but I have respect for his game. I don't know him. This is a broad stroke theory here, but he just seems like a spoiled little asshole, but a very talented, supreme spoiled little asshole. I think he's just in that of players where it's just like, I'm sorry to be the old man who's like, stop
these days.
Yeah, kids these days.
Showboating.
Like, yeah, just skit-scatting all over the field. But no, like from like what I read and what I see in his game, it's like he does have a good head on his shoulders. He just doesn't carry himself like a guy like Messi. Like Do you see Messi complaining to a referee whenever he's fouled? Like, no.
No,
Like,
he
even
just
if
laughs.
if he gets
He's old
hammered.
enough though.
Yeah. But even when he was younger, he picked himself up and started the play right away. Like, I don't have any time to complain. Let's go get a goal. But like Mbappe, I just hope he doesn't continue down the wrong path where it moves into like the Ronaldo territory. Like Ronaldo is still a
Speaking
child
of
that never,
spoiled little assholes.
yeah, like Ronaldo was a child that was so talented and never grew out of child status. Like he's an adult child now. And it shows in what he's doing. And I just hope that like, like I have respect for Ronaldo's game, even though I don't respect him as a person. Same with Mbappe. I just hope it like it like he just learns from the guy he plays club with. Like that's how you do it. Like do that. But anyways, let's talk about the other things that happened throughout the tournament. Nate, what were your kind of top 3 things throughout the tournament?
Man, I mean, in a World Cup, like, I mean, the lead up to this was just like, how could they even do this? How could you have one in Qatar and all this stuff? And it's just like, it was just very strange and weird. And you were always kind of raising an eyebrow, like, why did that get called? Or, things like that. But I think
Qatari bucks, man.
one of the things that struck me was like all the extra time, the decision all of a sudden to decide to like be very, very literal with the extra time is something that we've never seen before in the game. So in that first week, when you're like, there's 7 added minutes at the end of the first half, why? I thought that was crazy. And that was something that played out, throughout the game. Like that's 15 to 20 minutes, depending on which game you're watching, of extra soccer that these players had to account for. And occasionally it was impactful. Right.
Can I just say that I'm on the other side of the fence maybe on this one where I liked it.
Oh, I'm not saying it was bad. I'm just saying like it was very striking to me that like, holy shit, they're doing this. Because this is what what's that?
It told the players to stop fucking around. Like if you're out of gas because there's 14 minutes added on, then maybe don't kick the ball in the stands or fire it at the opposing team's bench. Don't lay on the ground and roll around for 10, 15 seconds and complain about an injury and then get up and jog away like nothing happened. Like I'm going to punish you for that later, and you're going to be tired. And the other guy who was standing around watching you be an asshole is going to have energy. So like, let's get back to the way it used to be where like you just play the game and you stop being a jerk. I liked it. I liked it, but it was striking where you're like 14 minutes. Did Christian Eriksen have another episode on the field? Like,
Lord.
A cardiac episode? Like what the heck happened here?
Yeah. The other thing that I feel like crafted the World Cup narrative for me was Morocco's deep spoiler run. Like how exciting was that to see that team? Not only, I mean, defensively they were so strong, but then when it was time to score, they could do it. And that was great. Their games were phenomenal to watch and really exciting the way that they knocked out Spain, knocked out Portugal. Like you never would have called that, early on. And I also loved just the role of the spoiler in this World Cup in general. Like Japan almost made a similar, if it weren't for that game against Croatia, like Japan almost beat Croatia, and how phenomenal would that have been too. So just to see some of these, I guess, more fringe teams getting their time on the international stage was really exciting to me, even though I have really no skin in the game for any Moroccan player or Japanese player, to be honest with you. But that was fun.
What I loved is that, do you know what the turning point was for Morocco to move into what they were during the tournament? It was the 3-0 loss they took to the U.S. in the run up to the World Cup.
Yeah, didn't they fire their coach? And
they fired their coach, and they brought in the one that the players actually had talked to the federation about bringing in midway through the qualifying campaign.
Because the old coach wasn't playing like Ziyech and like some of their like one of the 2 big name players on that team, and he was like the old coach
even
was
Hakimi
not a
wasn't
fan.
getting time either, and it's like what's happening here? These 2 guys are fantastic, but yeah, it took old Greggy B and his squad of youngsters to thump them in a friendly of all games. And
the butterfly effect.
Yeah. So good job, guys.
Starring Josh Hartnett. And then the third one for me, John, was the death of Grant Wall, and I know he's on your list too. It was just, the tournament had a different feel after that, but also just the fact that he was there. He was very outspoken. He was being very open with the world about how the officials were treating fans and players around certain,
And
around
workers.
and workers around issues of equality and of course, just like mistreatment on the job and things like that. So I thought that was impactful as it was, and then to you know die so suddenly in the booth during, it was just
Yeah.
wild, and
Yeah.
we've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I put this one number one on my list because I was reading about it as like the story was coming out
As it
and
was happening, basically, like the NPR guy was like, "Yo, Grant Wall just collapsed in the
yeah.
next booth, and everyone's over there. Hope he's going to be okay."
Yeah, that's kind of where I saw the first story on it, and I quickly told my wife. I'm like, that journalist that I was telling you about, who was like detained because of speaking out on on LGBTQ like rights by supporting a T-shirt that it was essentially supporting his brother who's gay, and she's like, yeah, I remember that guy. I'm like, he just I think might have died during a game in the press box, and she's like, "Oh, that guy was murdered."
I mean,
And I was like,
that was the first thought, right? Is like he was straight up poisoned.
"Yeah, well, that's still, I mean, it still could be true, Nate."
That's true.
But I think that the reason why it was impactful for me was, it's unfortunate to say this, but like the aftermath, and like, did you happen to see Hercules Gomez, like his comments
Mm-mm.
during like his daily World Cup show?
No.
He was like, I mean, he said all the things that we know about Grant Wall, like supremely good human being. Like we owe him a lot because he helped elevate the game in the United States and globally. But he was like, he's like, I took that man for granted. He's like, on my wedding day, he was the first person to contact me and congratulate me, and on he was the first person to send me a message when I moved into broadcasting. He was the first person to reach out and tell me, I'm doing a good job, but here's some pointers that I wish someone would have told me. And he's like, I never reciprocated the favor. I always just treated him like a casual friend, but I should have been equally as good of a person to him as he was to me. And then you hear other people saying like the same thing, like this guy was just a giver, and he gave it under the umbrella of the game, and I thought that was really interesting because there's a lot of times where like I did, I did follow his work, and I liked some of it, and some of it I was like, yeah, it's just, I know why he's doing it, but it's not for me. And I kind of took it for granted a little bit, and then now I'm like, I found myself going back and reading more of his articles that I didn't give a first chance to, and I was just like, man, like this guy like should be like really, really put on the pedestal he deserved. And to go out like that, some people were saying like he went out, the way he would have wanted, at a soccer game. Like that's just a bunch of
That's
bullshit.
a weird
No,
thing to say. Like,
yeah, it's like, yeah, no one wants to die in a press box in Qatar. Come on. But yeah, I mean, like I think that he can be, this unfortunate event really can be a stepping stone for a lot of folks to not only look at themselves as how they treat others, but also like from a journalistic perspective, like to be as fearless as he was, to go into the global game as an American and move himself up the ladder to be a category leading journalist in the game that his country kind of sees as like third fiddle.
yeah.
And what he did to help try to raise the profile of soccer in the States too. I mean, I thought it was pretty sad. My second one is I bring it back domestically. I think the Americans showed what they needed to do, that they erased the cruddiness that was the 2018 World Cup and not qualifying,
Mm-hmm.
and got there and performed there and gave us enough excitement that we would want to have in the group stage and getting out of the group, that we would expect from our country at the World Cup. But what I think it really did was it set us up. If you're talking about like all of the reboot generations, that whether it's the Italians, the Belgians, the Spanish, the Germans to some degree, the Netherlands. Those countries all went through a reboot process, and I think that we're now at that second stage of the reboot where we're only like the players have that identified right now that we could go into another World Cup with the same group. Add a few players that were on the fringes, maybe that didn't make it, but that were identified.
Mm-hmm.
Add a few players that haven't been identified that are coming into the next cycle. But we really need that next coach to take us there. And if I'm the United States Soccer Federation, I am parking a Brinks truck full of money outside of Luis Enrique's home and being like, I know you just got fired by Spain, and I know you talked about wanting to get back into club coaching, but hear us out.
Yeah.
Here we have the resources. We have the established player base. They're young. They're young and now with experience. Like we have all the puzzle pieces of a very high quality, high profile, next level coach to look at us and go, that's actually not a bad job over. That's not a bad job over there. And that price tag isn't bad either. So
well, and the players, man, like you mentioned, the players, we're in good shape from a roster standpoint. I mean, I think going into the World Cup, one of the biggest things I worried about was like, oh my God, our back line is a 35-year-old guy on the end of his Premier League career.
Redemption tour, baby.
It's an MLS starter who's fine, and it's and it's the guy that plays in the Scottish Premier League, like not high profile players. But when you think about, I mean, the World Cup is like the great equalizer. When you think about some of the players that were able to elevate their game from across the world and step up, like the left back from Morocco plays in the Moroccan league, right?
Yeah,
and he just blew up. So like, the Croatian goalkeeper, whatever his name, that plays for Dinamo Zagreb, like these are not players that play in the top league, in the top leagues in Europe, right? Yeah. But they're still able to show up at the international stage, and it was nice to see that, like, oh, our players can do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just a matter of now I think I agree with you that the next step is the coaching, because the players are in good shape.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the Federation. I mean, like, if I read a story tomorrow that comes out and says they gave Greg Berhalter 4 more years, I'm not going to be supremely disappointed, because I feel like Greg did the best he probably could have, outside of some man management issues that that was weird that came out, stuff, and some of the selection pieces. But I think he did what he could, and he learned what he could, and I'd be okay with it. I wouldn't be like excited about it, but I'd be okay with it. Mm-hmm. But we really got to look at that next level coach, and it's no disrespect to Greg Berhalter. I think he did what he could, and I think he set himself up for whatever job he wants to take next. Whether it's going back into the MLS or potentially, getting a crack at coaching abroad. I think he did all right.
Yeah.
My third one was the refereeing, Nate. I hate to be that guy who shits on referees, but oh my God, dude.
Inconsistent.
Inconsistency, inability to understand that the game's not about them. It's about the players and the ball. So many times I think referees in this tournament were making it about like their performance and being caught up in the theatrics of it all instead of just doing their job. Outside of the referee crew that did the final, I thought that was probably the best refereeing that we've had probably in the last 16 years from a World Cup perspective. I think that guy, he got everything right. Only had to go to VAR one time, and that was on one goal that was razor edge. It was the first goal, Argentine goal, where where Varane's junk in the trunk kept the guy onside. Yep. But that was the only one, and even then, the referees made the right call on the field. So I was like everywhere, even when they let the players play and like the tackles were getting heavier, I was like, it's consistent. It's like, we're okay. Like for this block of 20 minutes in this game, like we're going to let some things fly because it's what the game needs. It's not like me stopping it because I objectively think that it's getting a little bit too rough in the sandbox.
Yeah.
I think, like the roughness is needed because that's what the game's calling for. I thought it was fantastic. So I don't even know what the ref's name is, but hats off to
he's Polish,
the center official and then and the supporting crew. But yeah, those were mine, Nate.
One of the like real quickly on the ref thing, the biggest example that I heard throughout the World Cup of this like philosophy or this narrative that like, refs bring their own personality to the game. And I think it was in our game, the US versus Netherlands, and I saw him a couple other times throughout the tournament that it was some guy from Spain. And every time he'd be out there, every time they'd be out there, it'd be like, this is a guy that's got a reputation for being hot-headed and for escalating the situation, for making situations a little more fiery. And it's like, wow, that's literally the opposite of your job as a referee.
Right. Yeah. No one cares about you. But all in all, Nate, I think the tournament went well. I think it ended the right way. I think that I'm going to be extremely glad to never have to talk about Qatar ever again, unless I need to. But I'm glad. It was a weird time. It was a weird place. And I don't mean that with any disrespect to the Middle East, but it was just a weird setup in a location that made it weird. And I'm glad it's over, but I'm gonna miss it for the next couple weeks.
Well, John, let's pinky swear right now. 2026 road trip.
Yeah, we'll try to get to KC.
Let's get to KC. Yep, no problem.
I think I'm allowed back.
John's Midwest Vegas.
Yeah, I think I'm allowed back. I don't know I think my statute of limitations has run its course.
Well, there was more happiness to be had this week, and it started with when the MLS published, I guess, a very speculative mock draft article that had 2 Crows predicted to go in the first round, and that was really exciting to see. It was both Xavier Zenge and Herbert Endely. They were on a list that mostly was just a list of players that people should know about going into draft night because they could be picked early, but still it was like, wow, this is some interesting recognition for a couple players that if you don't follow the college game very closely, you can still relate and say, God, I watched those guys play this summer. But as we know, those weren't the only 2 Crows that were in the mix. Rory O'Driscoll, little did we know, or little did the MLS reporter know, was also on some draft boards, although he went a little later. John, before we get into our takes on draft night and how it played out, I'm super curious. I haven't talked to you about this at all, so I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about this. Talk a little bit about these guys, first of all. Maybe people wouldn't know Xavier, Herbert, or Rory, but talk a little bit about them. And maybe, did you hear anything from them directly leading up to the draft? I know you're on text a lot with these guys, or maybe through your network of spies from the Dayton coach who you've got a good relationship with. Like, had you heard some rumblings that some Crows could go in the draft?
I had not spoken to either any of the 3. But I did get a few folks that reached out to me asking me about each player. And I'm not going to say who they were, but it's people connected to the league. That I have either a relationship or it's kind of the 6 degrees of separation, got my information and reached out to me to ask about the players. And some of it was like character based, like, tell us about this guy and his time with you. And then some of it was like, what's your take on like them elevating up? And I behind closed doors, I kind of really never mentioned this to anybody. Behind closed doors, just gave an honest assessment, obviously promoted our guys because I do believe that all 3 of them are supreme talents and have their own strengths. And they all have, they're all high character guys. So I had nothing bad to say, but I did it, without fanfare. I mentioned, what I thought, thank them for thinking of us and wanting our opinion. Offered up if they wanted to talk to anyone else within the club, but left it at that. And from what I was hearing out of that was that I'm going to go bottom up. From Rory's perspective, Rory had the junior season that you write like Hallmark stories about.
Huge semifinal game.
Huge junior year.
Yeah.
Going into the summer, picked up an injury, wasn't able to feature with us this summer because of the injury. Kind of kept it safe going into his final year. Ended up getting injured, but was able to do enough going into the end of the season and still, multiple times only playing maybe 50 minutes of a game, but being like the player of the game and the offensive player of the week in the conference. So like still showing that he can do it. But it was a little bit less like, on from a hype perspective on him, but the proof was in the pudding that he has the talent.
Mm-hmm.
For Herbert, I would say he was the number one on the list of people who had the highest profile because of what he did in the College Cup last year and then what he was doing in the College Cup this year. So it wasn't like there was no surprise with Herbert. It was more of like, we watched some of the games this summer. Not a lot translate from what we saw at Indiana to Minneapolis City. What were your thoughts there? Anything we should note? And what are your thoughts on him as a person? And for Herbert, it was more of another guy who maybe put it down into second gear, trying not to interrupt a final senior season, which I totally get. But no doubt the immense talent and what he can do in the right environment. And then with Xavier, it was more of Xavier utilized his platform a lot like we saw out of Luke a little bit more, where it's like going from junior to senior year, like getting attention, utilizing a good summer in a safe environment, and then going into senior year and really turning it on. I thought he probably, out of all of the Crows, maybe Eli Goldman aside, had the best start to finish of his college season. And I watched maybe a handful of his games. I'd say 6, 7 of Xavier's games, and every single game he did more than a handful of things that made him stand out as the best player on the field or one of the best players on the field, and in a very good conference. So I thought that like his hype train like got even more as it went on, and I was pleasantly surprised when I started seeing the mock draft stuff where it's like, holy cow, like, all right, like I could see it. Like I've seen him play.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely could do it. Now, where would he fit in, and what does he have to? And I'm thinking to myself, like, what would he need to work on in order to be an MLS regular? And I'm like, oh, yeah, like he already does this well and that well. I'm like, maybe there's not a lot. So given the right environment, I think he could really be a solid MLS player. And not like the other guys couldn't be, but I was pleasantly surprised.
The more you thought about it,
the more I thought about it with Xavier. So, like I said, I did nothing to help these guys get drafted. I'm not trying to say that.
No, just interesting to hear, what, how Minneapolis City kind of the organization fits into some of these considerations as clubs come a calling or whatever, scouts call up, that sort of thing.
It's always weird, like when I get like a random number from Ohio pop up on my phone and I like let it go to voicemail and it's like, hi, this is so-and-so. And then they're like, can you give us a call back when I talk about some of your players? And I'm thinking like, which young guys they're looking at, and then they're like, well, tell us about, this player and that player. And, we're getting our draft prep ready. And, what are your thoughts? And it's like, oh. Okay, cool. So, so that's where that went.
The hype, the MLS draft hype is nothing like in the NFL or the NBA. And because of that, the reporting is pretty niche, right? You're not going to get, you don't have a ton of reporters who spend a lot of time analyzing the college game of so many players across the country. But also, I will say that the author of the article, I think because of that, the author of the article kind of based his picks on basically nothing but player skill and team need, right? But still, it was interesting that they identified Minnesota United as a potential home for Xavier Zenge. And my thought about this is like, no way are they ever going to pick a player developed here in Minnesota outside of their system. But it was an interesting thought. I don't know about you, John. I think that United would never pick a player that was developed by a competing youth program, much less one like Minneapolis City, who has had kind of a complicated relationship with them. Like they've passed 3 times on locally developed talent in their history. When you talk about the super draft, 2 out of 3 of those choices were obviously wrong and immediately proven to be so. Starting with Abu Dunladi instead of Jackson Ewell. They had the number 1 overall pick. They could have started building the spine with a solid local guy that would have brought people that would have filled the seats, right, and gotten people really excited for the club. Like, not only did Minnesota United make a splash onto the soccer scene locally, but we've got a homegrown guy to help us with it, and that didn't work out. Jackson Ewell ends up getting minutes with the men's national team. He's the captain for San Jose, and Dunladi just got cut from United for the second time. Mason Toye, they pick him the pick before the Revolution picked Brandon Bye, and I think
how'd that work?
Pretty obvious how that worked out.
Yeah.
And they pick most people on the board instead of Luke Hawkinson, which you can't really. Well, Luke went in the third round. He went almost, is kind of one of the last.
Almost
picks.
The same pick that Rory went
as
at.
Rory. Yep.
Is at the front office
of United views picking a city kid or an MTA kid or whoever as an admission, or at least an implication that their system isn't developing players at the level that they should be, right? And I think it's kind of protective of them to say, like, well, we didn't pick this guy from around here because we hadn't identified him as a top talent. Other clubs might, there's plausible deniability there. Like, other clubs might have identified him as a top talent, but we never did, and we still don't.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
It's just so strange to me that, like, so many other clubs are seeing the talent, and United just continues to look past it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the thought process is across town, but if it were me, I would care less about where the player came from and the benefits of what the player can do for the organization and what they can do for the on the field, and what they can do for the organization off the field. So if you came to me and said in our Minneapolis City world that there's a player from now NPSL Joy of the People who is on a fast track, and they feel that joining up with Minneapolis City is a potential better way to get them into a pro setting. Would I look at that player and go, no, they played for Joy of the People?
Joy of the People developed them. No way. Not interested.
No way. Yeah. I don't want anything to do with that. Or Duluth, or insert any team that we play against, or we used to play against, or we align with or don't align with. I mean,
the Olivers came up with the Twin Stars.
Yeah. A lot of so did the Browns.
Yep.
So who else? Add any of the players that we brought in that played with different organizations. VSLT. Like, even though we had a good relationship with those guys, like, and they folded, and we absorbed some of their talent. It doesn't matter. We look at players that can help us and how we can help them. And that's how I would run an organization. We're talking about the folks across town. Like, I think that maybe this is the sign that says, let's stop. Let's stop thinking the way we're thinking and figure out a way to connect better. Whether it's the fact that we know that there were people coming to our games this summer with an eye on Loic, or an eye on looking at any of the, Xavier or Herbert or whoever it might be, any players that we haven't seen yet. Maybe it's time that we think about how best to work together than work independently, because ultimately, at the end of the day, what's our mission, Nate? It's to elevate soccer in Minnesota and elevate players from Minnesota. Let's try to all get in line. And if we don't, we can still continue to do what we're doing, and we're going to do our thing, and everyone else is going to do their thing, and we'll go our separate ways until our paths cross again. And that's fine, but I think that we can all do better, us included, and it's good for everybody. It really is good for everybody. But then it is worth noting that from a Minnesota United perspective, two picks, one of them was local, and in being their own product, MUFC. Two player Emmanuel Iwe, who most of us know from his time with Joy the People and at St. Cloud. There was a lot of like, why did they take their own guy? And I think I even tweeted this out. It was like, makes the MLS look so Bush League.
It's so weird.
It's so weird. I understand the rules. So the rules around it are that Emmanuel played a year of college. So what happened was the signing of him from St. Cloud to the MLS Next Pro team. So I don't know any of the ins and outs there, but what I know is that it seems like that contract was an amateur contract where he was not given a full pro contract.
Mm-hmm.
So at that point, it opens up his rights because he was coming from the college ranks and he wasn't in the draft last year. So they would have probably had to do this last year. So potentially keeping him on the hook until after last year's draft and then knowing that they're going to have to do it this year. I would understand that, but it's not I don't want people to look at Minnesota United with a crooked eye. It's nothing that they did weird. I'll get to the weirdness in a second. It's something that they did weird with Emmanuel. They did what they had to do because the league is stupid.
Yeah, they needed to swoop in and basically reclaim him because any team could have drafted him.
Yeah, and that's why their first pick is the interesting one for me. Especially when you looked at the pre-draft boards and people were saying that defender and Xavier Zenge, with all the low-hanging fruit from the area, all that stuff we just talked about, was potentially a good fit there. They went with a player out of Union Omaha who is in the USL2, and they don't even have the ability to gain his rights without sorting that out with Union Omaha.
USL1.
Yeah, in USL1. So the weirdness there too is that this guy is actually tied to LAFC. So they picked a guy that there is a high likelihood that unless they sort things out with LA Galaxy and Union Omaha, they might never see this guy in their books ever.
Well, I mean, they got a good look at him when Omaha beat United in the Open Cup, right?
Yeah, and he's a good player. And Union Omaha is a really great organization. But that one was a weird one for me when there were equal like for like picks. Take Xavier out of the equation, but other defenders that had open rights that were like total draft eligible that were on the board. So that one was a little bit weird to me. And then also, looking at the Twitter space and seeing Jeff Reuter mention that every single season Minnesota United has given away or traded away their third round pick. So if you're thinking about the development piece of it and how and all the things we talked about with their development system and player identification, leaving on the table a potential flyer on a player that can be put in and then move up, to me seems like a whiff that you're not looking at. You're looking at, and I mentioned it too, that like the MLS with the Eway pick, the MLS is forcing you into reclaiming a guy that you should own in the first place and leaving an opportunity off the table for another talented player to be given a flyer. So it was just weirdness across the board for that. But I think that leaving the third pick on the table to me is something that they really need to take a look at. If I were in some of those seats, you might not feel that there's a player that could help your organization right now, but isn't the point of like the third round, and you look at someone like Rory, the third round pick is like the guy that you maybe send to MLS to cut their teeth and maybe, develop into a first team regular or a trade asset piece instead of just saying, we don't want to deal with it. So, anyways.
Well, back to our guys, because I think this is the part that makes us happy, John. It is a happy holiday show. That after all of that, Herbert Endley is the first City player that is picked. Dallas takes him at number 24, but Xavier didn't have to wait long to join his teammate in the pro ranks. Columbus, this is the thing. This is why there's probably a good shot at Xavier making the roster and getting some minutes, or at least getting a long look at developing him, because Columbus traded some cash to Houston and moved back into round 1 to snag him. So Columbus really seems to have wanted Xavier Zenge bad, and I bet they got a lot of looks at him when he played for Dayton, right?
Yeah.
And then Rory, who flew under the radar with a lot of teams, was nabbed up by our old friends, Nashville. So let's start with Endley, John. Matt Doyle on the draft show, and I really like Matt Doyle a lot, he was pointing to Endley specifically and speculating that Dallas would look to convert him to maybe a right back. Dallas has a pretty good reputation with developing talent. He pointed to Reggie Cannon, and I can't remember who the last guy was.
Yeah, he's got a really
and just in
hard to pronounce
general,
name,
Dallas
yeah.
Dallas develops the shit out of talent. I mean, it's Kellen Acosta, you got Jesus Ferreira, you've got all these guys that came up in their youth system. I think Walker Zimmerman did too.
Yep.
Is this a place
Weston
that?
McKinney.
Yep, Weston McKinney. Is Dallas a place that Herbert can succeed? It feels like not just in Dallas, but in Dallas potentially at that right back position.
To answer your question, it's a place where Herbert can succeed. Yes. Transitioning Herbert into a defender, I think, is not a good idea.
A mistake.
Not a mistake, just not a good idea. And I don't want to call it a mistake because I believe it's not a good idea. Let me try to figure out how to phrase this. It's not a mistake to do that because I think that with his talent, he could potentially be able to make the transition. Look at like an attacker like Brandon Bai, who moved to be a solid day in day starter at right back. But with Herbert's more of that player who needs to be in the offensive third and will give you more and give the people around him more with the ball at his foot within 35 yards of the goal. Now you're asking a player who cut their teeth on the offensive third to move to a place where you have to start to think about tracking like a defender versus how you want to beat a guy like an attacker.
Right.
There might be a recipe for failure before it even starts because you're asking someone to do a complete mind shift. And there's some players that just can't do that. I'm not saying that Herbert can't do that, but do you think that if there wasn't the opportunity for him to potentially do that, to push a program like Indiana over the hump to win the national title, that they wouldn't have already tried to explore that with him? They needed him in the offensive third doing what he does best.
Sure.
I think that we're looking at a pundit's opinion versus a program that kicks out quality players like Dallas. They didn't draft him to be a right back. Did they draft him to be a wide right-sided player? Probably. But there was also talk of him being like a 6 or an 8. I think again that's another spot where you're taking away, you're cutting off his strengths to try to match something that I don't think is going to match. So if you're listening to me, Dallas, put him in the offensive third.
Columbus, John, moving back into the first round to pick Xavier has to be a good sign for him. Like I said, he definitely impressed me in my small squirrel brain on the USL2 squad last summer as, you know, a Dumfries-esque wing back who found himself in the box quite a bit, but was still really, really down to track back and defend. For Dayton, it looks like he played more of a central defender role. I was watching his highlight reel, and it's just like all of a sudden, here comes this center back sprinting down the field with the ball, making a key pass or taking a long shot and scoring or threatening. That was pretty awesome. He's very versatile. What do you think the plan is with Xavier at Columbus?
I think this one's a no-brainer. He's an outside wing back. And he's more along the lines of like Buchanan for New England, and before he moved on from New England, and then what he does with the Canadian national team. He is your out and out box to box attacking and defending outside wing back, and only moves in to the center of the field as necessity dictates, based off of potentially a 3-back. Or like someone goes down and you're out of subs. You're like, Xavier can play center back. Let's put in an attacker and Xavier can play center back. Nice. I think it's going to look very similar to Brandon Bai. I think they're cut from the same cloth with the work rate and the way that they can occupy the space offensively and defensively on the outside of the field. So I think that one's a pretty easy one for me. He's going to be a wing back.
Nice. Nashville, John, straight loaded up on picks, and they selected Rory in the 3rd round, like you said, about the same place that they picked Luke Hawkinson. Rory was their 5th of 6 draft picks. So I'm going to say, similar to Luke, Rory will probably get sent down to the farm where he's going to have some work to do to break into this team. but hopefully, just like Luke, it works out for him. And Luke had, when we talked to him during the pandemic, he was down there, I think in Charlotte, Charleston. I can't remember, one of those C word southern cities where he was trying to figure out, like, how do I play in the middle of the pandemic? Like, how am I getting minutes? What do I have to do? How do I get into this? How do I, acclimate to this club? Rory's not going to have those challenges. Hopefully he'll be able to succeed.
Yeah, I think you're spot on here. I think what moves Rory into the farm system versus the first team is the injury history. And he's had some health concerns. I don't think obviously Nashville didn't shy away from that, which is awesome. They looked at what his piece of work that he did when he was on the field. Even in limited cases, like I mentioned, when he's playing 50 minutes and being the offensive player of the week in his conference, like 3 weeks in a row, he's doing something right. But I do think that given where he plays and looking at the roster in Nashville, I look at him needing to be moved where he can play, where he can get his body right, where he can perform, and then move himself up in. And that's not anything that a player should be looking at with a turn down nose, right? Like I see that as a really good opportunity for him to do what he loves best and be doing it at the professional level. So if it's having to go down to the twos for a year or two, and get the occasional call up before either getting traded to an opportunity full-time MLS rostered player or a starter, I think it's great. At the end of the day, for all of these guys, if they all get sent down, they're all playing professional soccer, and that's what their goal was. So it might be a crooked path for some, it might be a straight path for others. But all three of these guys, I think, have what it takes, both mentally, physically, with their game, between the ears, that they, the psychosocial part of things, the psychology part of things. I think they all have it. It's just a matter of now they've reached the next point, which was what they've all wanted to do since they were little kids, and then be a pro soccer player. Now go take whatever opportunity the club that selected you gives you and make the most of it.
Yeah. All in all, a phenomenal night for these kids. What is the feeling among Minneapolis City bigwigs like yourself, John, and the rest of the front office? Like, obvious evidence. Is this obvious evidence that everything is working? Like, wow, 3 guys plus the week, 4 guys in 1 year going pro.
It 100%
is it even more?
Is
it even more ammo for the recruiting trail? Like
it is. It's all the things you just said. Number one, it took us 7 years to get here with little bites off of the apple in the recent years. It started with Brandon. It went to guys like Steve going over to Europe, Luke getting his chance, getting drafted, a couple other guys moving on to other opportunities. We started to see it, and then the futures come into play, and now we're seeing how the futures are feeding even a direct path into the first team and into pro, and now there's no doubt, even for the people who don't like us, there is no doubt that we aren't doing it the right way, at least in the sample size that we have. And even if you said we only got 1 player drafted this year instead of like the craziness that was 3, we're doing what we said we were going to do, and we're elevating the game in the state, and we're elevating the players to a platform where they can get looks at. There's no denying that now, and it's not being conceded, but it's like, this is what we've all worked thousands of volunteer hours to do it. And look, it's right here. We've shown it. We've done it. So join us. If you want the same thing, join us. And I can say, without dropping any names, there's a lot of text messages from players and a lot of player interest form submissions filled out in the last 48 hours. Yeah. And that's even before we're going to move into making an announcement in the not too distant future of who's going to be the new leader of the first team. So like it's positive momentum, Nate. And
Yeah.
if my hangover from yesterday is any indication, it's a celebration that we all should have, whether you're a former teammate, current teammate, staff member, fan, parent, guardian, whatever, casual supporter of what we do. Celebrate this holiday season that one of your own times 3 times 4 if you add the week is moving on out of our nest because of the little piece that we were able to have with them. And I think that's something we all got to celebrate.
And so 3 city players head off to the pros, I guess 4 counting the week. We are casting our net to develop the new crop, the new clutch of crows. Futures trials begin the first week of January, and as we have talked about on this show before, without the NPSL team in the mix, the Futures is more than ever a program that has gained increased importance within the city pipeline. You touched on it a second ago, but why is that?
Well, I mean, we touched on it a few weeks or a month ago, 2
Mhm.
months ago when we were or no, more than that, 3 months ago when we were doing the recap. It's like, holy shit, we didn't realize that this is actually the loss of moving out of the NPSL is actually even more of a gain for the Futures program. And I think that we are in a situation where the importance now is continuing to look at the players who are being either misidentified from a talent perspective by others, which is okay, that happens in all sports, or the player who hasn't even having the opportunity to be identified. And but looking at that and giving them the platform, but also adding another layer to it, and potentially when we move from the winter session to the summer session with the Futures, what players can we potentially fast track? Like
Mhm.
adding that layer to it, which we weren't thinking about in previous versions of the Futures. We were thinking about giving everyone with talent the opportunity to become part of the club. Now it's okay. Well, with what we've seen in the last 2 years, is there someone here who's performing here that we can fast track? Um, could they help us in 2-3 years at the first team level, or 1 year, or this year? I think we have to think more about that now.
Yeah. The Futures program has had a number of success stories when you think about kids that have gone through it and are succeeding at some of the MIAC schools, continue to succeed, have played at a high level of the NPSL or the USL2, but none of them are as well known as Loic Masandi in club circles. This is a kid who I think he made it the first time he tried out, but maybe almost didn't.
No, he did.
From what I saw,
Yeah. No, he did.
but he had a lot of growing to do. He had a lot of growing to do because he was just a junior.
Yeah.
How is Loic's story the perfect illustration of the power of the Futures program?
I think it's the importance. Like I thought JJ crafted it really well. In what he kind of threw out on the social footprints is that there isn't a direct pathway to your dream. For some there is. I shouldn't say there isn't. Most times than not, there's not a straight pathway to your dream of playing soccer at the next level. And the next level could be starting on your high school team, being an all-state player, an all-American player, going to play at college, playing in the USL or NPSL or whatever, playing high-level amateur, then playing pro. I think what Loic's story told us is that if the individual has the talent and the drive, it doesn't matter who recognizes them, as long as the right people recognize them and allow them the opportunities to grow and support them in what they do, and I recognize that their talent can be helpful for you and for them. I think that, like, if you look at some organizations, a player at 18 years old who comes through from, a U18 setup, they're not going to be put into high-level amateur soccer at 18, 19 years old. We didn't even think about bringing Loic to the Des Moines Menace game until 48 hours before the game, when Nick Hutton went down with injury in training. And I remember the phone call we had was, who do we bring? Do we bring Loic, or do we bring an established former college player? And it was split. The camp was split. can the week elevate in that setting to be able to be leaned on for 90, maybe 90 plus minutes? Or do we need to bring someone who doesn't have that special sauce that we know the week has, but can just do the job because we've seen it happen before? Took the flyer on the week, scores a goal, shows he can do it, ends up being our leading scorer as a club across all footprints, and then gets moved into a professional setting after finishing up his high school career. And now he's, I don't think that there's even any doubt that he is going to be successful at the next level. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
So I think that what it does for our program is it shows that the identification piece, it doesn't matter who identifies them as long as they're identified in the right scenario, and that everyone's in it for the right reasons. Don't be in it if you're an organization to make money, especially at our level, to make money off of talent. Don't be in it to raise your profile because you have that guy. Make sure you're in it for your mission, which is to make sure that your club is a platform for the player, and the player is doing the best that they can within the platform, and checking them against that. I know for a fact, if we ever saw Loic start to get the success and him go outside of the humble nature that he had, the players on the team would have stepped in right away and been like, stop doing that, man. Like, you got a bright future. Don't act like this. We never had that scenario because Loic had that mindset. I'm going to work as hard as possible because I want to be a pro. And I think that get involved in January, friends.
Yeah.
It's the spots are there.
Trials are in 2 weeks. They start with group 1 on January 2nd. I think that group is full, right? So the group 1 of Monday, January 2nd, and then they go back the next week, Monday, January 9th. That's full, but group 2 still has openings. And that
group one is Group 1 is January 2nd. Group 2 is January 3rd. And then the following Monday, Tuesday is group 1, group 2 for the final tryout.
For the callback, basically, right?
No, they get two trial sessions. And then there's a final callback that puts both groups together the third week. And then after that session, the winner group is selected.
Yeah. So if you're listening and you or one of your kids fits the criteria and they're interested in signing up, like I said, group 1 sold out, but take a look at January 3rd and January 10th. Group 2 has some limited spaces open. You can just go to MinneapolisCity.com right now, MPLSCitySC.com. You can click on futures from the menu and it's going to guide you through what you need to do. Hopefully you have a Sports Engine account and all that stuff. Get that all sorted out and get a chance to play your way into the pathway to pro. So that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nate, that is a wrap on this week's show. The last show to wrap up the calendar year of 2022. Thank you for listening to this week's show. And thank you to our wonderful show sponsor, footballstadiumprints.com. If you are in the market for supremely curated soccer-focused graphic design on anything from mugs to T-shirts to sweet prints of city icons like Edor Nelson Field and the old club shop, head on over to footballstadiumprints.com and fill up your cart. Don't forget, friends, use the code CROWS10. That's CROWS10 for 10% off of everything you purchase. And remember, all U.S. orders ship right from the States. There's no pesky international shipping charges. 2023 memberships are now available. Jump in early and get the discounted price, which ends in January. You'll not only get a voice that helps shape the club for the future, but you'll be able to vote on things that are on the horizon, from kits to scarves. Scarves are going on right now. Kits to scarves to other important club matters. And obviously get a look into all that sweet upcoming Crows merch. And as always, remember, Minneapolis City is a 501c3. So we're getting close to tax time again, Nate.
Yeah.
Consider that charitable gift to the club that loves to give back. If you're interested in getting a hold of us, we, as always, made it super simple. Hit up the club on Twitter at MPLSCitySC, or at the show at The People's Pitch, or via email mcscpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, that is all for this week's show, folks. I am John. That was Nate. We turn the page on another calendar year for the murder, and we look forward to ride the wave of excitement from getting 4 former Crows to the pros. See what I did there? Crows to the pros.
Nice.
For us at the show,
hashtag.
For us at the show, we wish you and yours the happiest of holidays. Stay safe. Stay tuned in for early January with more goodness on your favorite member-driven, community-focused soccer club. And as always, you got hooked. Minneapolis, now be back.
In your jingle bell.